A frightened elderly woman stumbled backward, her trembling hands clutching an old wooden box against her chest. The front door shook violently as someone pounded on it from outside. "Open the door, Grace. We know you are hiding it." Tears streamed down her face as she hurried toward a loose floorboard in her bedroom. Her hand shook so badly that the box nearly slipped from her grip. "If they find this," she whispered, "my children will never be safe." Just before she pushed the box beneath the floor, she heard another loud bang. Then her eyes met a young man's face through the window. On his finger was a silver ring engraved with a strange symbol she had prayed never to see again. Her heart almost stopped. "They found us!" That was the last thing Mama Grace managed to whisper before collapsing. If you enjoy emotional Nigerian mystery stories filled with suspense and unforgettable twists, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more powerful African stories to life. Mama Grace had spent over 30 years raising her 3 children alone. Her eldest son was Chinedu, a calm and responsible electrical engineer in Ibadan. Her only daughter, Ngozi, worked as a nurse in Lagos and rarely missed calling her mother every evening. The youngest, Emeka, was cheerful, restless, and always believed there was more to every story than people admitted. For as long as they could remember, one subject had always been forbidden: their father. Whenever they asked how he died, Mama Grace simply replied, "It was an armed robbery. Leave the dead to rest." No one questioned her anymore. After all, everyone in the neighborhood respected her. She attended church faithfully. She helped struggling widows. She never spoke badly about anyone. Yet, there were strange habits she never explained. Every year, on the same date, she locked herself inside her room until nightfall. She burned every old family photograph that included her father. She refused to let anyone enter the small room behind her bedroom. Whenever Emeka joked about forcing the lock open, she became unusually angry. "Promise me you'll never enter that room." "But why, Mama?" "Because some doors are closed to protect the people we love." None of them understood. A few days after the frightening incident, Mama Grace insisted everyone come home for a family dinner. "I miss hearing laughter in this house," she told them over the phone. When they finally gathered, the evening felt peaceful. They laughed, shared old memories, argued over who made the best jollof rice. Then someone knocked. A neatly dressed visitor stood outside. "I came looking for Mama Grace." As she stepped into the sitting room, her eyes immediately fell on the silver ring on the visitor's finger. The same strange symbol. Her face lost all color. The plate in her hand crashed onto the floor. "No," she whispered. Everyone rushed toward her. "Mama?" She struggled to breathe before grabbing Chinedu's shirt tightly. "They're coming back." "What are you talking about?" "Don't let them know who your father really was." Then she collapsed. Doctors managed to stabilize her in the hospital, but they warned the family that the shock had severely affected her heart. That night, after everyone had fallen asleep in the waiting area, Mama Grace quietly returned home alone. She unlocked the forbidden room for the first time in decades. Dust covered everything inside. She knelt beside a loose wooden plank and pulled out an old revolver, a bundle of blood-stained documents, and an old photograph showing her late husband standing beside several powerful-looking men. Every one of them wore the same silver ring. Mama Grace broke down in tears. "I promised I would protect them," she cried softly. "I have kept that promise for 32 years. She reached for a box of matches. Just as she prepared to burn everything, she sensed movement outside the window. Someone was standing in the darkness, watching her. If you're already wondering who was outside that window, stay with this story, because what happened next changed that family forever. The next morning, Chinedu received a phone call that froze him where he stood. Mama Grace is gone. For several seconds, he could not speak. What? What did you say? I'm sorry, the doctor replied gently. Her heart gave out in the early hours of this morning. Within hours, Ngozi and Emeka returned home. The once lively compound was filled with mourners. Women wept openly, while neighbors spoke of Mama Gracie's kindness. She lived for her children, one elderly woman said. May God give them strength. 3 days later, after the burial, silence settled over the house. As they sorted through her belongings, Emeka stopped in front of the locked room. He said, Mama is no longer here. Maybe it's time we finally know what she was protecting. Chinedu hesitated. It feels wrong. Ngozi looked at both of them. She told us never to enter, but she also told us not to let anyone know who our father really was. Don't you think she wanted us to understand someday? After a long silence, Chinedu nodded. Break the lock. The rusty padlock fell to the floor. The room smelled of old wood and forgotten memories. There was almost nothing inside except an old table, a broken chair, and loose floorboards. Emeka knelt down. I think there's something here. Together, they lifted the plank. There it was, the same wooden box. Inside were the blood-stained papers, the old revolver, the photograph, and a sealed envelope with their mother's handwriting. On the front, she had written, If you are reading this, then I could no longer protect you. Ngozi's hand trembled as she opened the letter. My dear children, everything I told you about your father's death was a lie. Forgive me. Your father was not an armed robber. He was the bravest man I ever knew. He secretly gathered evidence against a dangerous organization that hid behind respectability while destroying innocent lives. When they discovered what he was doing, they murdered him and made the whole town believe it was a robbery. From that day, I chose silence instead of revenge because I wanted you to live. Tears rolled down Ngozi's cheeks. No. Chinedu slowly sat on the floor. So, our entire lives were built on a lie, Emeka finished. Just then, someone knocked gently on the front door. Standing outside was an elderly man with grey hair and a walking stick. My name is Elder Daniel. The siblings exchanged confused glances. I was your father's closest friend. They invited him inside. The old man stared at the photograph for several moments before closing his eyes. I prayed this day would never come. What really happened? Chinedu asked. Elder Daniel sighed deeply. Your father discovered a secret organization. They looked like respected businessmen, community leaders, and successful people. But behind closed doors, they ruined families, eliminated anyone who threatened them, and built their wealth through fear. Ngozi swallowed hard. Mama knew all this? She knew enough to understand that if those people ever discovered you were his children, they would finish what they started. Emeka leaned forward. Does that organization still exist? The old man's face turned pale. It never disappeared. It only became more powerful. A heavy silence filled the room. Then Elder Daniel looked directly at Chinedu. You must never tell anyone whose children you are. Before anyone could respond, a loud crash echoed from the back of the house. They all ran outside. The kitchen window had been smashed. Drawers had been pulled open. Cupboards emptied. Nothing valuable was missing. Not the television, not the money, not the phones. Only one thing had disappeared. The old photograph. Elder Daniel's breathing became heavy. They know you've opened the box. A chill swept through the room. Someone had been watching them all along. Don't forget to like this video if you are enjoying the story. The next discovery will reveal why Mama Grace spent 32 years living in fear, and the person behind everything is someone nobody suspects. None of the siblings slept that night. Every sound outside the house made them jump. At sunrise, Chinedu locked every door before turning to Elder Daniel.
We can't keep hiding. If these people have been after this secret for over 30 years, then we deserve to know everything." The old man lowered his head. "Knowing the truth comes with a price." Ngozi looked him in the eyes. "We've already started paying that price." Elder Daniel slowly nodded. "There is one name your mother never wanted you to hear." He reached into his worn leather bag and removed a faded notebook. "Chief Benson." Emeka frowned. "The businessman who donates to schools and hospitals?" "The same man," Elder Daniel replied. "People see generosity. Your father saw something else." According to Elder Daniel, their father had discovered that Chief Benson belonged to a secret network known among its members as the Shadow Society. Outwardly, they appeared respectable, but secretly they smuggled weapons, laundered money, and arranged the disappearance of anyone who stood in their way. Their father had secretly gathered evidence for months. He wanted to expose them, Elder Daniel said quietly. "So why didn't he?" Ngozi asked. "Because someone betrayed him." Silence filled the room. "Who?" Emeka asked. "I never found out." The answer left even more questions than before. That afternoon, Chinedu suggested they visit the abandoned warehouse mentioned in one of the documents their mother had kept. Maybe there's something there she wanted us to find. The three siblings drove there together. The warehouse looked deserted. Broken windows, rusted gates, dust everywhere. As Emeka searched an old office, he noticed a loose brick in the wall. Behind it was a small metal container. Inside were several cassette tapes wrapped in plastic and a handwritten note. It read, "If you have found this, then the truth is almost yours. Trust no one until you hear my voice." Emeka's heartbeat quickened. This must be Dad's. Before they could celebrate, the sound of footsteps echoed through the building. Someone else was inside. "Hide," Chinedu whispered. 3 men entered, carrying flashlights. "Search everywhere," one of them ordered. "The recordings must still be here." The siblings held their breath behind stacks of old crates. One flashlight beam swept dangerously close to Ngozi. She covered her mouth to stop herself from gasping. After several tense minutes, the men left. Only when the sound of their vehicle disappeared did the siblings finally breathe again. "They're looking for the same evidence," Chinedu whispered. "We have to leave." On their drive home, a black SUV began following them. It stayed behind every turn, every junction, every traffic light. "They're still there," Ngozi said nervously. Chinedu kept his eyes on the road. "Don't panic." Suddenly, the SUV accelerated. It rammed the back of their car. Emeka shouted, "Watch out!" Chinedu struggled to control the steering wheel before pulling into a crowded petrol station. The SUV stopped briefly. Its tinted window rolled down just enough for someone inside to speak. "You should have listened to your mother." Then it sped away. Nobody saw the driver's face. That evening, they finally found an old cassette player in the house. With shaking hands, Chinedu inserted the first tape. Static filled the room. Then a familiar voice spoke. "My children, if my children are hearing this, it means I could not come home." The siblings froze. It was their father's voice. Tears filled Ngozi's eyes instantly. "My children," the recording continued, "I did not run away from you. I fought so that you could grow up free. The men chasing me wear expensive clothes and smile in public, but do not be deceived. Their greatest weapon is that nobody suspects them." The tape suddenly cut off. Emeka quickly removed it. "That's all?" "There must be more," Chinedu replied, picking up the remaining tapes. Just then, Chinedu's phone vibrated. An unknown number had sent a single message. "Your mother protected you for 32 years. She can't protect you anymore." A second message arrived almost immediately. "Return the recordings or prepare to bury another member of your family." For the first time, the siblings realized that danger was no longer in the past. It had followed them into the present. If you've made it this far, subscribe now, because the final part reveals who betrayed their father, what Mama Grace planned before her death, and how the family's darkest secret finally brings justice after 30 decades.
The threatening message changed everything. For the first time, Chinedu looked at his brother and sister and said the words their mother had spent decades trying to avoid. We're no longer running. The following morning, Elder Daniel arrived carrying a small key. I prayed I would never have to use this, he said. What does it open? Ngozi asked. And a safety deposit box your father rented shortly before he was killed. Your mother asked me to keep the key until she was gone. The siblings immediately drove to the bank. After completing the formalities, the manager placed a dusty metal box on the table. Inside was a small digital recorder, several documents, and one final sealed letter from Mama Grace. Ngozi opened it with trembling hands. My dear children, if you have reached this point, then you already know your father died protecting innocent people. What you don't know is that I made one final promise to him. I promised the truth would come out only when you are old enough to survive it. I have already arranged for copies of every recording and document to be delivered to the authorities if anything happens to me. If those people come after you, do not negotiate with them. Let the truth speak. The room fell silent. Mama Grace had been planning for this day all along. Emeka switched on the recorder. Their father's voice filled the room once again. My name is Emmanuel Okoro. If this recording is being played, I am likely being killed. The leader of the Shadow Society is Chief Benson. He ordered illegal weapons shipments, money laundering, and the disappearance of innocent witnesses. I have gathered enough evidence to expose every member involved. The recording continued with names, dates, transactions, and secret meetings. There was no denying it. The evidence was overwhelming. As they left the bank, 2 black SUVs blocked the road. Chief Benson stepped out, dressed in an expensive traditional outfit, smiling as though nothing was wrong. He said, I was hoping we could settle this quietly. Chinedu stood in front of his brother and sister. You murdered our father. Chief Benson sighed. Your father was stubborn. Ngozi's voice shook with anger. And you made our mother live in fear for 32 years. He replied coldly. I gave her many chances to hand over the evidence. She chose silence. No, she chose to protect us. Chief Benson's smile disappeared. Give me the recorder. No, I won't ask again. Just as 2 of his men stepped forward, the sound of approaching sirens echoed through the street. Several law enforcement vehicles surrounded the area. Officers quickly moved in. Nobody move. Chief Benson looked around in disbelief. What is this? One senior officer held up a file. We received multiple copies of detailed evidence early this morning, along with instructions written years ago by Mama Grace. Chief Benson stared at the siblings. You planned this? Chinedu slowly shook his head. No, our mother did. Within minutes, Chief Benson and the other members of the Shadow Society were placed in handcuffs. As they were driven away, Elder Daniel quietly wiped tears from his eyes. Your father can finally rest. A week later, the siblings stood before the graves of both parents. Fresh flowers rested on the headstones. Ngozi broke the silence. I spent years thinking Mama didn't trust us. Chinedu smiled sadly. She trusted us. She just loved us enough to carry the burden alone. Emeka looked at the sky. She lost the love of her life, but she refused to lose her children too. They joined hands in silence. For the first time in over 32 years, the fear that had lived inside their family was finally gone. Some secrets are not kept because of shame. Some are carried out of love. Mama Grace chose silence not because she feared the truth, but because she believed her children's lives were worth more than revenge. Her patience, wisdom, and sacrifice eventually achieved what anger never could: justice. If this story touched your heart, remember that love sometimes looks like sacrifice that others may never understand.
Subscribe to support more meaningful Nigerian stories that inspire courage, family values, and hope. Your subscription helps us continue sharing stories with powerful lessons. And before you go, tell us in the comments, would you have forgiven Mama Grace for keeping such a dangerous secret for 32 years? Also, let us know which country you're watching from. We would love to hear from you, and we'll see you again in the next African mystery story.